Ramily, welcome into a brand new episode of the Rams Report by Chat Sports, presented as always by Prize Picks. Guys, on today's show, we are going to be breaking down some of the biggest takeaways from Rams OTAs. The Rams canceled their mandatory minicamp. That would have been June 15th through 16th. But they still had their OTAs over the last couple of weeks. And we've still got a lot to break down, a lot to dive into from everything we learned from that. So that's what we're going to do on today's show. 3 huge takeaways from Stu Jackson, one of the Rams' senior media writers. But before we get into all of that, I got to let you guys know, tomorrow on the Rams Report, we are doing a mailbag. This is the first time we've done one of these. I'm going to pile up all the questions from you guys from our last couple of shows, and I am going to answer them. So today's video is your last chance to get some Rams questions in for the mailbag. So if you want to be featured in tomorrow's video, get your question answered in tomorrow's video, then make sure you drop one in the comment section below. I'll probably pick the best 10, 15, depending on how many we get, and we will answer them for you guys on tomorrow's episode. So make sure you stay tuned, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. But let's jump into today's show, starting with this. I want to give a shout out to Stu Jackson. He did an excellent job putting this article together, giving us these takeaways. He is one of the Rams' in-house senior staff writers, and he put it out on his Twitter. So if you want to go check out the original article, I definitely recommend that you do so after you finish today's video. But here is everything we've kind of learned from what Stu had to say. And I will say a lot of this we've touched on the show already, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper today with what Stu gave us. So starting versatility in the secondary. Stu is not the first person to note that this is a growing theme for the Rams this offseason, and it kind of made sense if you looked at the acquisitions that they made, that they were looking for a more versatile and more physical group at the secondary spot, across the board at the secondary spots, but especially at corner. Here's what Sean McVay had to say on Trent McDuffie, and really just the growth in the secondary in general. He said, you're seeing Trent McDuffie all over. There are certain guys that'll play just safety or just play outside corner. But then you got a lot of guys that can play safety, they can play the star position, they can play dime, money, but we're teaching concepts. And so that flexibility and that understanding of what are the core coverage contours that we want to play. What does that look like out of 3 down, out of 4 down front mechanics, out of some of the known rush packages? But I've really been pleased with the trajectory of the teaching progression and then the guy's ability to be able to give the feedback, show it in some of these jog-throughs. And then we've done some 7-on-7s where that's tilted towards the offense. So, a lot of high-level technical terms, your typical McVay speech here. But at the end of the day, what he's getting at here is they want to bring in a group of corners that can play across a number of different positions. And Trent McDuffie absolutely fits that bill. And if you look across the board, he's not the only guy in that room that does, but having him as the high-profile acquisition absolutely fits with the overall theme of we love guys who are incredibly talented players, but incredibly talented players that can fill a number of different roles and help us present a number of different looks for teams, making us harder to account for. But think about this. Across this room, Trent McDuffie can play outside. He can play slot corner. Quentin Lake can do everything from outside corner to slot corner to safety. Cam Kinchins is very similar to Quentin Lake in his versatility. You've got 3 of your 5 starters are guys who can start at half of these spots. This is incredibly difficult to prepare for. It's tough to plan on where everyone's going to be on any given snap because the Rams can mix and match at their leisure. They have all of the pieces, and it's just about how do we want to use them in any given moment to make ourselves as difficult to prepare for as possible. How do we mix and match things on the back end with what we have going on the front end? A lot that makes this defense better, guys. And we're going to keep talking about it on today's show after we give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, and that's our friends over at Prize Picks, guys, America's #1 sports picks app. Guys, if you are a regular viewer of the show, you know I am a huge fan of Prize Picks. And what's really been fun lately on Prize Picks for me, guys, is getting into the World Cup action. I mean, America's hosting this year. I'm not usually a big soccer guy. I'm not going to lie to you, my friends. But when America's hosting, it gets that patriotic spirit going in you a little bit, and you absolutely have to watch these games. And what way to make them more fun, or what better way to make them more fun than getting a Prize Picks lineup going on it? So I am looking at Balogun in this one, the matchup against Australia. And as I'm going through all of the projections, the one that really stands out to me, guys, is the more on his fantasy score. If you look at the game that he played against Paraguay, where he ends up scoring 2 goals, a 32.25 fantasy score. And look, again, not a huge soccer guy, but from what I know about these internationals, Australia is not the team that this American team just defeated in Paraguay. I do believe that they're capable of overwhelming them. And I think that Balogun's going to be a huge part of the attack and the plan once again for America. So that's why I've got the more on him in my lineup. This is 1877 to pay 65.70. If you guys want to tail me if you agree, you could do that at Prize Picks. But if you want to fade if you disagree, feel free to go ahead and do that. And if you're brand new to Prize Picks, make sure you use our promo code. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. Let's keep going on our takeaways from Rams OTAs here, guys. Number 2, and this is a conversation we've had a little bit on this channel, but from Stu yesterday, we got a little more of a push, I guess, towards the Stetson Bennett narrative at QB2. And it just isn't going away, guys. The idea that Stetson Bennett could secure the QB2 job, something that I, not to toot my own horn, told you guys shortly after the draft might end up being the case. I told you guys, don't be surprised if Stetson ends up as QB2 for 2 key reasons. And a lot of you guys, and I don't blame you at the time, were not very open to this idea. But the 2 key reasons I laid out were, number 1, he's got more experience in this system. And number 2, the Rams don't want to drive up a media story around Ty Simpson being the direct backup. If there was anything to happen with Matthew Stafford this year, if there was a slide, they don't want there to be a narrative around Ty Simpson being, oh, the Rams are going to stick him in as the backup right now, they can play Ty Simpson. Then no. If they can put him as QB3 early on in the year, they can avoid that entirely if any sort of early stumble happens for this Rams team. But again, praise for Stetson continues to come in. Here's what Sean McVay had to say on him the other day. This is something we talked about on the show recently. I've seen tremendous growth. I think he's done a really nice job. He's earning the confidence of his teammates in terms of commanding the huddle. Then he's done a really good job of stuff in terms of reading with his feet. I think he's had a really good last couple of weeks, and I've been proud of him. Stu Jackson kind of hammered in on this again, saying that Stetson is getting the vast majority of the reps. Again, I've moved my depth chart. For those of you who watch regularly, I had Ty at number 2, got his new Rams headshot in there, but I moved him down to QB3. For now, I think until we are proved otherwise, don't be surprised, don't be shocked if that's the early depth chart. I'm not saying things can't change as the season goes on. I'm not saying this is any reason to panic around Ty Simpson, but we're hearing good things around Stetson Bennett, and we know the Rams are going to want to put their best foot forward if anything was to happen with Matthew Stafford. This is Super Bowl or bust. If they feel like they can still feel like 2 things can be true at the same time. Ty Simpson can be the best plan long-term for this team, and Stetson Bennett could still be more ready right now to start if absolutely needed to do so. Because again, we haven't heard anything bad about Ty Simpson. In the midst of all the good we're hearing about Stetson Bennett, which is a lot of good, and it does seem to indicate he's taken more reps in practices in OTAs and 11-on-11s and 7-on-7s. It was primarily Stetson Bennett getting those opportunities behind Matthew Stafford. Simpson definitely getting his, but we're hearing a lot of good around Ty himself. Here's what Stu Jackson had to say on him. Simpson understands the quarterback room he's in, and more importantly, the shape of the roster overall. So he's content with learning from Stafford, Bennett, and Los Angeles' coaching staff. He's also committed to putting in the extra work necessary outside of practice. Again, I think it's a great problem to have, almost, for this Rams team. Like, this is a good problem to have. It's still a problem. You've got to figure out who's going to be the backup quarterback. But you've got two guys who are doing everything they need to be doing off the field and making it a very difficult decision for you because they both are performing well, because they're both clearing all of the milestones and all of the hurdles you are looking to see them hit. And now it's just got to be a decision between who's more ready. And right now, it feels like Stetson's experience and his veteran status right now is helping him get the edge. Let's keep going, though. This, of course, is a situation we are going to keep an eye on throughout the rest of the offseason. But one last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here on today's show, Myles Garrett and Trent McDuffie's roles for this team, both from an X's and O's perspective and from an off-the-field perspective, and how they help everybody grow. I guess not off the field, but how they help everybody grow as leaders. I think this was something that Stu did a really good job of elucidating. Of course, you make a huge acquisition like Myles Garrett, and immediately there's a lot of follow-up questions and a lot of excitement around that for a team. I think if you're this Rams defense in this locker room, from everyone from Chris Shula all the way down to everybody that's going to get an opportunity to rush the passer, should be very excited about the arrival of Myles Garrett. And one of the questions, that we did not expect to come up is Myles Garrett going to play stand-up linebacker for this Rams team? And it did come up because we saw him working from that role in practice. Of course, we talked about this a little bit on the channel already, but Chris Shula kind of put to bed the idea that that's going to be a full-time role for him. It's more about adaptation and getting his feet wet in this Rams defense, learning the scheme right now. He did not participate in any team drills or in OTAs. He'll start to do that in camp. But for now, he was just integrating on individual drills. They did have him work with the outside linebackers. But when asked about the plan for Myles Garrett, this is what Chris Shula said. And I think this is really the heart of it. We're still going to have our principles with that stuff, but we're going to let him do what he does best. And we all know exactly what he does best. You're not going to take Michael Jordan, LeBron, all those guys and pull them out of their comfort zone. We're going to work with him and put him in the best spots that we think for him and the defense to succeed. Again, if there is a concern, Jared Verse. I've seen a lot of people say Myles Garrett's going to play the Jared Verse role last season. Jared Verse and Myles Garrett are not the same player. They are wildly different players. They're two different stylistic players at the edge position. There are many styles of edge. They are not the same. Jared Verse has coverage versatility. Myles Garrett really does not. He is not a coverage linebacker. He is not going to drop in coverage for the Rams the way they use Jared Verse. I think what Chris Shula is getting at here around Myles Garrett is that, yes, we have the things that we like to do with outside linebackers and with edges, but we also understand who Myles Garrett is, and we didn't go get him to have him drop in coverage. Again, you make the Michael Jordan and the LeBron comps for a reason. You're invoking those names to prove a point about the kind of role that Myles Garrett is going to play. If you traded for LeBron James, you're not going to ask LeBron James to play full-time center for you and just be like, all right, LeBron, we need you to crash the glass. That's your new role. Like, no scoring, no passing from LeBron James. We're not going to ask you to set up the offense at all. Like, all you're going to do is crash glass for us, LeBron. Like that'd be a horrific offensive plan. That would be a horrific trade. At the end of the day, not that LeBron couldn't do that. I'm sure he could crash glass very effectively. But at the end of the day, you want LeBron being a complete offensive engine, and you want Myles Garrett being a pass rush specialist, the pass rush role and dominant role that he can play in that, and also everything that he can do as a run stopper for you as well. He's no slouch in run defense. But again, Myles Garrett is not the only blockbuster acquisition this offseason. There's two of them. He gets a little bit buried right now with all of the discussion around Myles Garrett, understandably so to some degree. But Trent McDuffie has an enormous role to play for this team as well. And Stu Jackson talked about what they both kind of bring, not only to the other players on this Rams roster, but to the coaching staff. Chris Shula brought up how both players are vets, that both players and the coaching staff can learn from. It is ultimately Shula's defense, but he tailors it to the strengths of the players, which is where those learnings and input will come in. I think that's really smart. And at the end of the day, it goes to show you don't bring in these two guys just to ask them to fit in as pieces in the existing scheme. That's not what great coaches do. Good coaches, they have a scheme and they try to bring in players who fit their scheme. I think that's something that good, fine coaches do. Great coaches adapt their scheme to the talent of the best players that they have. They seek out the best possible talent, and then they make the scheme work to support the talent that exists for them. And I think that is exactly what Chris Shula is elucidating here. Obviously, things are not going to radically change, but you don't have to have radical change to make Myles Garrett and Trent McDuffie constantly in positions to have success. And if you listen to them, if you allow them to have the input that it already is clear that Shula intends to allow them to have, it's going to be really seamless for that to happen. This integration of them at their best is going to be incredibly seamless. I truly believe that. I think Shula's a great defensive coordinator for this team, and I think these two guys working in tandem with him, man, look out, NFL. Because again, we've talked about it so many times. This team was one defense away last season from doing everything you set out to do, from winning a Super Bowl. And now it feels like you not only have a defense, but potentially the best defense in the NFL. It's a very exciting time to be a Rams fan, my friends. It absolutely is. And I'm sure you've still got some burning questions. I am sure that you do. So I want to hear them. Drop them in the comments of today's video. Get at me on Twitter as well if that is easier for you. However you want to send your questions to me, send a Rams question my way, and it might appear in tomorrow's episode of the Rams Report for our off-season mailbag. I am really excited for this. I'm very excited to hear from you guys and answer some of the questions that have already come in. Some really good stuff. The Ramily always as sharp as ever, as I always say. Again, we will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for your time, and let's go Rams.